Hi everyone, and welcome back to Noona's Noonchi, where I do a deep dive into some of your favorite K-dramas from a mental health perspective. Today, I'm going to talk more about Startup, my favorite K-drama of 2020. They're all my favorites, but this one's fresh in my mind. What I want to talk about today is workplace well-being, basically mental health at work. Work can be all-encompassing. It could be entrepreneurship, which we saw in Startup, building a startup from scratch, building on your hopes and dreams and passions, talents and skills and strengths. That's what Startup was really about, aside from the love story and the ending that we didn't like. I didn't like. Anyways, well, I want to talk about your why, your purpose, your mission, profession, vocation. That's ikigai, which I'll talk about in a second. What is your why in the workplace? Or what is your why, your reason for being? This is very important to your mental health. In fact, studies show a reason for getting out of bed, especially when one is suffering from depression, correlates to your purpose, the why in your life. And by the way, you can have several whys. You can have your whys in your family, your community, your schooling, your academics, your why could be specifically work-based. What I'm trying to get at is, what is your why in different aspects of your life? For the sake of Startup today, I want to talk about your why, your purpose when it comes to your work. Why did you go into your profession? Why do you enjoy your work? These are some of the questions I ask when people come to see me. I work with a lot of professionals. I see a lot of anxiety and depression surrounding their purpose at work because work is stressful, right? So when we're talking about mental health in relation to Startup, the K-drama, I want to outline 2 different scenes that I really like that talk about your purpose, your why. Side note, Start With Why, one of the best books I've read from Simon Sinek. He talks about the golden circle, right? Your why coming first, grounding you. I also believe that. And I also believe that helps with your mental health, knowing your purpose of getting out of bed, because it's hard sometimes to get out of bed when you're stressed and you're anxious, depressed, there's things going on in your life, whatever that is, and then going to work and having to show this certain face. Your purpose is what's going to ground you, your why. In the first episode, sadly, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, Tanmi's dad, who ends up dying at the very first episode, really killing off a favorite character from the get-go, has a passion of building his own company, entrepreneurship. He says, I didn't quit my job because of my boss. I quit my job because I envisioned a new world. I envisioned a new world for a new world. So he had hopes and dreams. He knew his why. And he had obviously just come out of an investment meeting where he got his first investor. Yay, that was great. But that's not why he was sharing this. He was super excited about that success, but even before that, his why was very clear. He envisioned a new world, and that's what sustained him. He believed in what he was doing. That is entrepreneurship, folks, but also in the corporate world, I worked in that world and I understand it. It's important to know your purpose, whatever it's part of a team, the product you're building, a service you're offering, being customer facing. What is your why? This is what's going to sustain you when things are stressful. And hey, if you can't answer the question, why do you enjoy your work? Or what's meaningful about what you do? Then here's a suggestion. It may be time for a change. There are many of us who have made career changes. Hence, being in mental health, my 3rd career, I was searching for my why. I believe I have found it, but I believe my why was threaded throughout the things I did. Okay, so it doesn't mean you do something for a life season, whether it's in corporate, entrepreneurship, nonprofit, wherever that is, volunteer work, stay-at-home mom. There is purpose in everything you do, by the way, but I need you to find it. It doesn't mean your purpose is for something else. I also need you to find your purpose in the now, what you're doing now. It's a concept of mindfulness, right? So Tanmi's dad knew his purpose. He was hoping for a new world through building his own company. So moving on to the next episode that I want to talk about that has to do with purpose, your passion, mission, profession, vocation, ikigai. I'll talk about that shortly. Teaser. Is episode 8 when Yoon CEO, Yoon Tae-pyong, talks to hanjipyeong about how Samsung has their why. And she was happy about that. She's like, hey, their why is clear. But hanjipyeong was like, the practical guy he is. But that's all they have, CEO Yoon. They only have their why. They don't know how to do anything else. They don't have their how, their what. She goes, as long as they have their why, everything else will follow. I also believe that. You can figure out logistics, but you need to know your why to sustain you. Again, big part of your emotional, social, and psychological well-being, big part of your identity, why you do what you do. So she was proud that Samsung Tech knew their why when it came to Noonchi, right? Their app for the blind. And that actually silenced hanjipyeong, if you noticed that scene, when he was like, good point, Yoon CEO. They do know their why, and the how and everything else can follow and come later. Let's talk about ikigai, because that all relates. We need to understand that concept of ikigai being four elements balancing each other out. What you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for, right? So again, passion, mission, profession, and vocation. That is what makes ikigai. Let's talk about ikigai mental health. What are you pursuing? What are you good at? What floats your boat? What's your North Star? Balance that, your passion, with your mission, what the world needs. What can you give to the world? What can you give back to the world? It doesn't mean you have to go into nonprofit or philanthropy, right? Your work, even in corporate, colleges, wherever you're at, can mean something, and you can turn it into a passion. If it's just one-sided, such as financial only, what you can get paid for, which I see, there's an old adage, there's an old saying, right? Money can't buy happiness. I find truth in that. I see that all the time in my work. Again, I'm realistic too. You have to be able to sustain yourself financially, especially if there's responsibilities. And that's what the Japanese concept of ikigai is saying, to balance that within there. But also with what you love doing, what you're good at, and what the world needs. I love all that. I think that relates directly to mental health. So I need you to identify your ikigai. What is something that gives you fulfillment? But also find your ikigai in relationships. It's not only about things, it's about people. That's a huge part of your mental health. Finding quality of relationships to sustain you. Balancing it all together with what you can get paid for is ikigai. So how do you do that? Well, I love talking about being solution focused, right? And being solution focused is what your end goal is. What's the result you want? What's the ending you want? Some will say, you know what, Jeannie? Tami's dad might say this, I want to have my own company. I believe that was his ikigai, or that was his goal, his solution at the end. And he did everything to get there. So he knew his why. Samsung Tech, their goal was to provide a better world to live in. In fact, Tami says that at the very end, and you see hints of that throughout the whole drama. But early on in episode 8, when the Yoon CEO was pointing out they know their why, her why was like, even if we can help just a few people to make a difference, that's enough. That was her why. And to her, that was good enough. And so did the CEO thought that everything else will follow. And everything else surely did, right? Yes, it's a drama, but it did surely follow. And that's the example I want to show you. So understand what gives you purpose and fulfillment. Do not underestimate that for your emotional, social, and psychological well-being. Again, I see this a lot in my work. Work is a huge part of what you do. Entrepreneurship, corporate, community, colleges, wherever you work, you spend a lot of time there. And yes, you may get paid for it. Important part of sustainability and being financially responsible in your life. So I need you to understand what is your why there. Find it in that moment, and perhaps it's not going to be long term. Maybe you're there for a little bit to move up and be able to be an executive director of a nonprofit, or go into climb the corporate ladder so you could change diversity, equity, inclusion in the corporate workspace. Find that why and say it. Simon Sinek says this too. Start with your why. Everything else will follow, as they said in Startup. So again, important to understand that concept of ikigai, finding your why, because everything else will follow.